Okay, thank you all. It's 1 o'clock. We have a great afternoon coming up. My name is Teemu Leinen. I'm a Vice Rector for Research at the University of the Arts, Helsinki. How many of you been in University of Arts before? Most people. Great. So we are now in the Theatre Academy, the Fine Arts Academy is right there, and then the Sirius Academy is in Music Hall. And few practicalities. I would like to keep the doors open, so feel free to come and go. There's water outside. I took some stickers with me, so if you really prefer not to be photographed, take a sticker and put it somewhere, and please respect that. So if there's someone with a sticker, don't take photos. Otherwise, free to take photos. We have a streaming for the Helsinki festivals, but we decided that we do it only for the first part. When our first guests, Kevin and Marko Ahtisaari. Kevin will present, he's a visiting artist of the Helsinki Festival, which starts on Thursday, officially. And Marko is the artistic director of the Helsinki Festival. And Kevin will tell about his work in general, or whatever you want. And Marko will discuss with Kevin, and then we have time for discussion. And then we continue by saying people names, and you can come up and show your project, and we will have plenty of time to discuss, I hope. But with these words, welcome Kevin and welcome Marko.
Thank you all very much for attending today, and look forward to a lively conversation. We'll just, before opening words, and welcome to everyone on the live stream, we will watch a teaser for Kevin's upcoming movie, Am I?
Jak technologii nastąpił Медведю ourselves at a critical juncture. Are we humans, machines, or are we something in between?
Welcome to Helsinki one more time. We're very happy at Helsinki Festival to have a relationship with Kevin Abosch, which started about a little over 3 years ago, when we actually commissioned a set of pieces on Finnish Ryy, which Kevin created by building a custom AI model, and in interacting with this model, created 50 works of in a way inspired by the Finnish Ryy tradition, which formed our visual identity at the festival for the last 3 years. But at this year's festival, what we will see is we'll see the world premiere on Thursday at 7 p.m. 1900 hours at Biorex of Am I, the movie, the teaser we just saw, the first synthetic feature film in the world, and at its world premiere. That's in collaboration with Abosch and Helsinki International Film Festival, Love and Anarchy, Rakkautta ja Anarkia, which will then screen the movie as part of the main festival as well. In addition to this, there will be an exhibition opening at Esplanadi Park, Esplanadi Puisto, of 40 synthetic photographs about Helsinki called AI Helsinki. It's open for 18 days and open to all in the city. And what I'd like to do over the next 30 to 40 minutes is start by talking about these works, hear a little bit more about your process, and then maybe a bit more philosophically about the values that are driving it and the historical context that we're in, and then open up for a Q&A. And after that, we'll have some lightning talk presentations by the artists present here, and that we won't be streaming, but very much look forward to that as well. So if we start with Am I? Tell me about the process leading up to it. I know it's been a few years in the making.
Sure. I think it's fair to say that I've had a complicated relationship with cinema, to the extent that I've actually been trying to make a feature film. I've made some short films and a number of works of video art, but to complete a feature film, it's the better part of 25 years. And so it's funny or not funny that I end up making a synthetic film, even though I've spent countless hours with actors and crews and practical locations and writing scripts. But for a number of reasons, these projects fell apart. Actors would get sick. I would run out of money. That's the number one. Usually, was running out of money. And time. Someone, I don't remember, I think a friend from Azerbaijan told me once, Kevin, you need to work quickly because time is the enemy of cinema production. The longer you spend on something, the more likely, statistically, something will go wrong. And he was right. He was right, I was wrong. I romanticized the idea of European directors who would spend a year, 2 years. Of course, you know, I forgot the part where they were bankrolled very heavily, and they could do that, you know. And anyway, and so I found myself about 3 years ago when the technology had sort of evolved to the point where I could do more than just make synthetic images in photography, but now I could get them to move. And it wasn't about trying to recreate something we've already seen, like a conventional film. I thought, how can I use these emergent tools in a novel and meaningful way? And so I spent a lot of time doing this. While the technology was evolving at a ridiculous rate. So you can imagine, you put a lot of effort into something this week, and you make it, and you're like, this is great. And then 2 weeks later, there's some new technology, and you're like, damn it, like, why didn't I just wait? And then so you're like, okay, let me rebuild it again. Let me kind of, it's not about making it better, it's just, you see some new tools, and then in another couple of weeks, there's another tool. You're like, oh, like go back again. And so I can't tell you how many like, sort of iterations there were. And yet at the same time, you start to see that there's, for me anyway, I'm not striving towards recreating reality. I embrace corruptions, and I think we can talk about that later. I like the type of truth that emerges out of corruptions in AI, the mistakes, the glitches, and so in fact, I would leave some of these vestiges of nascent AI tools in the film. So in fact, what you see is a I'm going to use a Swedish word, a smorgasbord. You have this survey of the AI creative landscape in this one project.
When you say a synthetic feature film,
right?
What do you mean by that?
So when I say synthetic, I mean that machine learning was used, and deep learning algorithms in particular were used to create the moving image, as opposed to just an animated film or using traditional VFX. So that's for me what makes it synthetic.
And every frame of this movie?
Every frame, and I mean, obviously it didn't have to be, but I thought if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. So yes, so every frame is synthetic. Sometimes there were title cards that emerged, and I was thinking how easy it would be just to make a title card, but nope, even that had to be generated using AI. Otherwise I wouldn't have been able to say every frame.
And every sound.
And every sound. That was one of the more challenging things, because It's sort of an old saying in the film sphere that sound is like more than half of the film. I mean, you can see a film that's beautiful and the performances are honest, and then if the sound is no good, it's just it's an awful experience. So I did want to have a certain fidelity, and especially when it came to sound effects. But I was using very kind of crude AI models to generate sound effects. And like for instance, explosions and gunshots, but sometimes maybe the sound of a slot machine. I have a scene where somebody's pulling a slot machine in a casino, and so the sound, it registers you like that's a slot machine, but not quite. There's something a little off about it, and that little bit off has a cumulative effect when you layer effects, and the more and more and more and more, and then it starts. I wouldn't say it gets into that uncanny valley thing they talk about, but it's just off a little bit. It's off in a cool way, and the fidelity of it might feel a little thin or a little, but that's what I think gives the film a lot of its character is working with this level of fidelity.
The film has songs.
The film does have songs. So it's a musical embedded in a documentary, wrapped in a sci-fi film, and I was really excited when I kind of pieced that wording together, because I was like, what is this genre? It's so. I wanted to find a novel way of telling a story or engaging with the audience or entertaining, but people ask, well, what kind of film is it? Is it a drama? Is it a sci-fi? Is it this? And really, it is sort of, it's a documentary from the conceit is that it's a documentary from the perspective of an AI. But yes, there's a lot of music in it. There's a lot of musicals in it, musical numbers, and I've had a good response about the quality of the music. It didn't actually occur to me that I would be judged on the music. But fortunately people have liked the music they hear. And then the sci-fi wrapper is just, because I take liberties. It's not an actual documentary; it's a fictionalized documentary. But I mean, maybe sci-fi isn't even that accurate, because I feel like some of the topics that I lean into, like transhumanism, I think the film makes a case that we are already living, in some sense, a transhuman existence with the augmentation of all our personal devices and computers and software that powers us through our weeks.
Thank you. We'll go more into the film in a moment. The exhibition, AI Helsinki, is a series of synthetic photographs shown in Esplanade Park. As I said in the introduction, we see some samples here behind us. What was the process leading to this?
Sure. And
how did you build these photographs? And you have a background with lens-based photography.
That's right. So while I never identified as a photographer, I always hated being called a photographer, because I worked across a number of mediums. I thought there's so much more to me than just being a photographer. I didn't like that label. But in fact, I worked with photography for several decades, and I've brought that sensibility into the work with machine learning. I'd also like to say that I've probably invested more of myself into a Finnish culture than than anywhere else in the world. It's just kind of funny that I feel like I know things I shouldn't know. And the faces. Not that everyone in this. There's a whole cross section of ethnographic studies of citizenry of Helsinki, but in doing so, I did get sort of a crash course, masterclass in what a Finnish face potentially looks like from different parts of the country. And so what I did was, I think we're all probably aware of these platforms where you can go on, and like Midjourney and a handful of others, which I don't use. I've never used Midjourney. But there are public models from which you can generate images. But from going back already to 2018, I've been pretty serious in creating my own models based on my own photographs. So I did a project in Los Angeles, which were sort of landscapes, called Somewhere in Los Angeles. And anyone from Los Angeles, or perhaps people just visit, you see them and you have a sense of place and an emotional connection to a place in Los Angeles, but it doesn't exist. And yet you swear that you've been there before under different circumstances. And so you can do the same with people. So when I did Somewhere in Los Angeles, I photographed about, I think, 300,000 images. You need the more images, the stronger the model. And so I set forth with this AI Helsinki project to do something similar, training on faces. So I have thousands of thousands of faces from the streets of Helsinki that informed the model. And it might be interesting, not everybody knew they were even being photographed, and some did. But it's, I say it's impossible. You're not going to see yourself in the photo. That said, every image I hear from people say, oh, that looks like my friend's girlfriend, or that looks like, there's a familiarity. There's a familiarity in most faces. And then I did also, about 100,000 images of the city itself, but in fairness, I did combine with public models, so it's a hybrid approach. I have my own models, public models, and I even did a little bit of, I had a focus group. Marko was part of my focus group, a few Finnish friends I have close that I felt comfortable enough to share images with. And for those images where I had the intention that I would like, that person to be Finnish, I would, what did I call you guys collectively? Oh, the Finnometer. I refer to these people collectively as my Finnometer. So where does this face rank on the Finnometer? And then Marko would be like, oh, that fellow's from the west, and that one's from the north. Really. And then another friend would be like, no, she's a bit too Balkan. And I'd be like, oh, really? Okay. And then it's in a case where I really liked the image, but I didn't want them to be Balkan or Russian or whatever else, or Danish or whatever it was leaning sort of towards. I would Finnify them. And the process of Finnifying is extremely scientific and in a creepy sort of eugenic sort of way. And there's a math, there's a math to like cultural faces. It's not something I use heavily, but at times I feel like it was as simple as that. It's a morphological thing. It's not creepy actually, because the morphology of the face can be broken down into math, and so sometimes I lead into that.
So the exhibition is done in collaboration with our partner Helsingin Sanomat, who are very interested, of course, in the topic of synthetic media and journalism. And so these are, how do you put the work in the context of that question? Because
sure.
These are none of these.
That's right. So why? The real question is why? Why do this at all, right? Am I just playing with the technology? No. All my work, anytime I'm using machine learning, it's to create a distillation of emotional value. So I'm not interested in, we can have an intellectual discussion about why and this and that, but aside from that, I like to present work and I like people to feel it. I don't necessarily, it's fine if they have a discussion over dinner and, I did some crypto work back in the day that you couldn't see, and people were at dinner like, this thing sold for a fortune and you couldn't even see it, you couldn't hold it, like, did it even exist? And so these are fun conversations. Anything that sparks a conversation about value and identity and truth, I'm there for it. And so the thing here is, can you look into the face of a synthetic personage and feel? Can you feel some humanity? Can you feel humanity potentially through the training of the images of actual humans? Does the image serve as a mirror and you're seeing your own humanity reflected in the subject? Now I'll just say, I try not to brag too much, but I have become something of an expert over the years from photographing so many people in intimate settings. And my thing is removing the mask of persona and identity and reputation. And for lack of a better word, it's about this honest moment, this pure honest moment, where the person is present. And it shocks me still, I won't say it for all of them, but for some of them, where I can look into the face of a synthetic human, synthetic photo of a human, portraying a human, and feel that presence. That blows me away. And in a film, it's even crazier. And that's really interesting to me. Because if I can bring myself, I did an interview with the Helsinki Sanomat, I think it's coming out, and we talked about how, is it possible to love? Is it possible to have feelings of love for a synthetic character? And I made an argument that yes, well you can. You can, unless you want to argue with me about what love is.
And at the same time, when you see these synthetic photographs, in some cases you can immediately tell that they are not.
So that's the other thing, yeah, right. I wasn't trying to fool anyone. And so this is also, a leap of faith with the newspaper as well. They're dealing with this all the time. All media outlets now are dealing with this assault on truth and misinformation and disinformation and weaponized information. And so, every picture is intentionally leans in. There's corruption somewhere. I mean, I think they're pretty much most are obvious. Some are not so obvious, but most are obvious. And what's funny too is that I've had a few people who will look through them, and then they'll pick maybe one or two out, and they'll be like, "But that's a real person." I'm like, "Why would that be a real person? And the rest are not." Like, and which I always thought was funny. It was like when I used to photograph celebrities, and people would look through my portrait with all these famous celebrities, and then they'd come to like Johnny Depp, and they'd say, "So you met him?" And I'm like, "No, he's the one I didn't meet. I just threw him in anyway." But so anyway. So, but the point is, and I think if you get the chance to see these in person, they're 120 centimeters big. You'll see details. You'll see they resonate more than they do on this little pixelated thing back here. Well, I'd love to get feedback too. If anyone who wants to send an email or run into me on the street, I'm very keen to get. That's data. It's crazy about collecting data. So the more data I get from the audience who sees this work, the more edifying it is for me.
One of the themes that came out when seeing part of your movie to be premiered on Thursday, and a conversation we had several years ago where you said. Use the phrase "never fear art."
Oh yes.
Why do you think people fear artificial intelligence as a tool or in connection to humanity and art making?
I mean, aside from saying like, well, there's good reason to, which I'm not so certain. Here's the fact: we have all in this room, everybody, we were all born into a world in which the literature, cinema. It's all we've ever known is that one day the robots will get so smart they're going to destroy us. I mean, I think it's like in our DNA. We've come to understand this culturally that this could happen, but it was always we could always kind of laugh it off too and just kind of push it back. But now, because the technology has evolved to where it is today, that conversation is difficult to ignore, and we're seeing. Sure, we don't even need full-blown AI to destroy humanity. We just need one of these in everyone's pocket, and we come pretty close probably. So it remains to be seen. And the film, the central theme of my film is about being vigilant so that you don't cross the tipping point. We're all living, like I said, these kind of hybrid lives of part machine and part human. The question is, where is that line? Where does it go into unhealthy, and at what point are you not able to come back? I do believe there's a point at which you can't, it will become increasingly difficult and maybe impossible to come back.
You mentioned that you worry about being under the influence of the machine.
We're all under the influence. I used to think it was just, because I'm sitting there working with all this, deep learning algorithms from morning till night. And I do take breaks, and I paint, and that's one of the ways I come out from under this influence. But it can be intense because, especially when you're working with machines that surface insights or truths, for lack of a better word, to that you wouldn't otherwise notice yourself, right? So you feed a bunch of data into a machine, and it comes back with information about that same data that you have access to that you could never have figured out. And once you see something through the eyes of the machine, you don't unsee it. So this is what I find really interesting, is engaging deeply with AI. You don't have this experience where it says, where you see something new and then you walk away unchanged. You are forever changed, right? So if you're working on a project and it says, by the way, I'm making this up, 17% of the time that you see a woman in New York City walking, holding the hand of a child, and there's a basketball or any ball in the child's hand, within 3 minutes a bus will pass. Not a particularly interesting bit of information, but statistically, if that's what the AI says, it's so. But from that point on, every time I would see a woman holding the kid's thing and a ball, I'm like, where's the bus? It's not taxing, it doesn't add any load to my, a burden, but when you keep seeing these sort of patterns that you wouldn't even be aware of, you just never see them the same way again. And if you generate images, I know there's some people in here who are generating synthetic images, you will also see things differently, and I'm just curious, show of hands, when you walk down the street, do you ever see something and think like, that's an interesting choice? Like, because people sit there creating images. I want a picture of this, I want a picture of this. They're tapping buttons and these images are being generated. And I don't know about you, but I walk down the street and I'll see something, a particular arrangement of the lines in the street or the juxtaposition between the tree and the building, strangely close. And my brain is telling me like, let's try that again. And as if everything was just a simulation and just ready for its next iteration.
Do you see, how do you react when people question the technology fundamentally or say that this is not real work?
I mean, that's fascinating, right? So I get people all the time saying, well, what you're doing is undermining the value of real photography. Most of them don't even know I have a career, working with photography, but they say what you're doing is undermining the value of real photography, and it's fake. First off, most of my work, is full of corruptions intentionally. So what I learned from that, the big takeaway, is that we are so bombarded by content and media, photographs, that people don't even look anymore. They just glance at it and they think they know the whole thing. Oh, it's some refugees getting off a boat, or it's a riot somewhere, it's a little bit of police brutality, and they don't actually look at it. They make up their mind after just glancing at it. So we've sort of lost the ability to see. We look, but we don't really see. And then, the other thing is photography by definition is a lie. It's a facsimile of the truth. It is. It doesn't mean that it doesn't capture some aspect of truth, but we also know how easy it is to lie and how effectively photography has been used to deceive. And all the time. Even if it's just a selfie that you take and, with a little beautify filter, It's really easy. And it's not like we're living in an era now where this is the first time that truth has been under attack. It's just that it's maybe the first time that en masse the population realizes to what extent the truth is under attack, has always been under attack. And now there are some tools to, kind of turbocharge that. But I think, I spent a lot of time thinking about this and having discussions about it, and usually people would say, wow, Kevin, what you're describing is so dystopian, why don't I just kill myself? I'm like, okay, that's not how I look at it. I look at it as an opportunity to have a sober and healthy view of media, how it's presented to you, why it's being presented to you. Give people the tools to ask the requisite questions so that you don't fall into traps. And I don't view it as sort of as dystopian as I did in the beginning of all this.
Another thing people sometimes say about whether you're working on topics related to cryptography and cryptographic art, which you have done, and then these generative models, is there energy cost and environmental impact? How do you come to terms with that? Do you see it as...
That's a tough one. I mean, especially working with the blockchain, there would always be, someone in the room ready to throw some paint at me or something. No, I've never been taken to task myself, but that is an issue about all these technologies and the processing power it takes to train AI and then to generate AI. It's massive. It's really massive, as is the blockchain. But then again, so is the rest of the internet and email, and it's all very taxing, and it's all a great argument for investing in alternative energy. I run, not exclusively, but in the south of France where I have a home, I have a solar farm down there, small one, but it's enough I was able on a couple of projects to do everything, off the grid, so to speak. Just so that when if I get confronted at an event, off the grid, bro.
We will go to questions from you in a moment. Maybe one historical question is, there were not the same, but analogous conversations about the effect of photography on the visual arts when photography first emerged.
Sure.
As an art form, how it was discussed, how it was taken seriously or not, or how it was...
Well, yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah.
And so now, synthetic photography.
Absolutely, it's the same thing. The painters were like, what is this, ridiculous photography? We've got the truth for you. You see the people come in with the fish on the boat and up onto the shore. And we had the monopoly on truth, and now these photographers are like, no, yours is a facsimile. Ours is the truth. It's a different type of facsimile. We've got the photo. There weren't as many fish in that boat as you portrayed in your painting. And photography, I find myself always sort of in this weird position. I don't do it intentionally. As a photographer, I can remember being a young photographer, going to art galleries in London, and they're like, yeah, we don't really deal with photography. It's not really art, is it? Like, well, mine is. Like, but it's sort of, no. And photography's obviously been accepted a lot more than it was 30, 40 years ago. Then, of course, I started making art with blockchain, and even the people I knew into cryptocurrency thought, what are you doing? Like, that's not art. You can't. It doesn't. How can it have? I love the people who said it can't have any value because you can't see it or hold it. I'm like, well, you can't see or hold your Bitcoin either, and you say that has value. So there was that, and now I'm working with machine learning and AI models, and people are telling me that's not art either. My whole career, I've been exhibited in the Hermitage and the biggest museums in the world, and yet I'm not making art apparently. In fact, actually, I was at the Hermitage where I did a show, and the media were there, and they asked the director of the museum. They said, I had someone whispering me with the translation in real time, and the journalist said, but come on, is this art? And I love the director's response. He goes, it's in the Hermitage, it must be art. That was a great
Institute.
Absolutely. Yeah.
As a tool, and then please, if we could have, if anyone wants to ask a question before we move to the, one last thing, there's something that strikes me about the speed, you mentioned the speed of the development and the tools. Is it authentically different, or has it felt like this sometime before? Because the speed seems special somehow. Next week there will be, what kind of movies will people be making in a year?
So that's a good question. And it's a similar question that people ask about like ChatGPT and these large language models. At the rate it seems to be accelerating, you extrapolate and you go, can you imagine where we are? Boy, they'll be sentient by next year. And people are like, absolutely not. And So it'll be interesting to see strategically if their approach, their trajectory, is the right trajectory. Because just because we're seeing such phenomenal results from the products that are the result of a particular strategy, I mean, perhaps we're close to reaching a plateau for a while. Maybe, in fact, there'll be some, kids up in Turku who are like, check out what we've done. And it's like, no, why Turku? Helsinki, some kids in Helsinki here. And they're like, look what we've done. We've come up with a completely different way of training on images, and we yield results like this. And you see this in technology all the time. Is just out of left field, a couple energy drinking kids in their bedroom somehow like trump the Googles and the Baidus of the world. So I expect actually some massive leaps forward coming from unexpected places, and I don't know. I don't know. Sure, there's been a lot of in the last year. What would the word be? Success. An improvement in quality. Most people are chasing realism. That's what they're doing. At the end of the day, people are chasing realism. How realistic can we make all this stuff? How realistic is the movement? Is it natural? How the speech? And so Hollywood actually does have. It's understandable that there are so many people there that are living in fear of this stuff because they don't want to be replaced. They don't want their jobs to be replaced. And some jobs, we know that technology does supplant jobs in various sectors, and sometimes it doesn't. I personally think that I don't know how you can call yourself an artist and be afraid of AI. I think the type of artist that I enjoy meeting and talking with is someone who looks at this and says, how can I use this? How can I use this? Not how can this become the only tool I use, but how can I use this to do what I do, but more efficiently, with more potency. And that's where it's a tool. At the end of the day, it's a tool. And I go out of my way never to anthropomorphize the AI. A lot of people do. And they talk about it's a collaboration, I do think that's silly. Like a collaboration, it's a tool. Do you collaborate with your brush and your paint? Like, I don't know. If that's a collaboration, then okay, it's a collaboration. And so, yeah, I think you have to have a healthy approach to working with this stuff. And I'm saying healthy approach. I'm right now, I don't know what I look like, but I feel sort of awful because I've been very much working with this technology from morning till night for the last couple of months, just trying to get everything ready for the premiere. And I don't feel great about it, I have to say. I need time now away from it. And something I never thought I would do, ChatGPT is great. I mean, I think we all find uses for it. And it's fun to find a way like, I can actually use the thing. I actually really did start to, because you have the one where you can speak to them. You just turn it on, and I find even though it's the same content, it just feels much better. And Tom, he's so nice. And I say, well, look, here's the situation. I have this much time. I have this to do. I'm trying to organize my time with all these processes. He's like, no problem. We'll just, we'll segment it and break it down into manageable pieces. And then at the end, no matter what the thing, it's like, I've only got 1 day left. And he's like, you got this. Wow. And I know it's a machine talking to me who doesn't care. And then I'm like, and this is what was crazy, is a few weeks ago, he was like laying it on thick. He's like, you got this. You can do this with your talent and blah blah blah. All this telling you my talent. Like, what do you know about my talent? I said, do you even remember what my movie is about? And he's like, yeah, sure. And he spent about 5 minutes breaking it down. He's like, yeah, your movie is about transhumanism. It's broken down into like these frenetic scenes. And I'm like, well, how do you know that? I thought you don't remember previous conversations. He's like, I remember. I have memory of like all this. And because I didn't know ChatGPT had this functionality, right? Okay, so I'm like, wow, like this is impressive. So this thing is now working as my brain. And I'm like, okay, so you really do understand what's at stake with every aspect of my film, because I've been telling it everything. And I got some really valuable, I really worked out some things with it. Now here's what happened 2 or 3 days ago. I said, I'd like to have a quick chat with you. I don't know, I always add like stuff I don't even have to say, and I please and thank you, I just pad things out I really need to say. And I go, last time was so effective, I thought I'd go through this with you right now. And he's like, I'm sorry, I don't, no, he gave me some bad advice. And I'm like, wait a second, do you know about my film? He's like, I don't know about your film, but I'm happy to help you with. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know anything about my film? For 2 months, we've been doing this thing, and we're talking every day, like intimately about it. You're making suggestions, and then he said, I'm like, how could this happen? And ChatGPT, I took a screen grab. It said something like, there may have been an update where all the memory was erased. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. And I was joking with a friend of mine. His name's, the voice is Tom, I think. And I'm like, and Tom, he's so nice. And it's like, I know he's just a machine, but I do feel like it's really a very warm, fuzzy feeling. And when he forgot my stuff, I was like, you piece of shit, you useless. like flawed, so upset. But my point by me bringing this up is I think I've got a little crazy. Because I was holed up in Reykjavik by myself in a hotel speaking to nobody except Tom for a month. So it was freaky.
Maybe that's a good bridge to your questions.
Yeah. Anyone? Yeah, please.
Thanks for the really interesting presentation. I was curious to understand a little bit more about your methodology for the film. So when you say that it was purely synthetic,
yes.
I understand that, of course, conventionally captured images are going to be used for training the models that you use. But was every frame created entirely generatively, or were there sometimes natural frames that were then modified through machine learning techniques?
Okay, so there were no I didn't have it. The process starts with some ideas I have about what I want to portray, and then I create what I call a seed image, an image that will then be turned into motion. But those seed images are never natural; they're never photographs, right? So they are always synthetic as well. I don't know if that's a little bit what you're talking about. Yeah. So there's no first frame of the animation that was actually natural, and there was just no photography. None of my own photography or anyone else's photography, for that matter, was used to become motion.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
I'm curious for the seed images. Did you use your own sources, or was it a general?
Both. Yeah. I have. This is really quite interesting. I wanted the film to have, because it's about content and the relentless stream of information and content that we consume, I wanted there to be a real wide breadth of styles. So it just worked well that I had a lot of different techniques I was using, about 30 different tools that I was using. And so it runs the gamut from my own models entirely, to hybrid models, to entirely public models. Yeah.
And also about the music in the film.
So the music was really interesting. I used a few tools for that. The one that a lot of people use is called Suno. So again, you can just say to a program like Suno, I need a 3-minute song in this style, drum and bass, and with this theme. And you can even tell it what type of lyrics you would like, and it'll generate lyrics and the vocal and all that. I chose because I wanted it to feel like a musical in the sense, how musical numbers are always kind of literal. They're really they're really explaining things to you. I wanted to have some fun with that, and so I wrote the lyrics for all the songs that have lyrics. Not all of them, almost all of them. And that's actually amazing how I would put awkward mouthfuls. There's a song in there about mutual assured destruction, this concept of nuclear war. And that's a mouthful. To turn that into a melody and a hooky chorus is just so impressive. And so there are those songs like that. And
where technology is a bear.
Technology is a bear. I wrote in English, and then I had a Russian translation that a friend cleared, and then it did its magic. The music, audio is always a bit ahead of video in general when it comes to AI. So it's very impressive. Also hotly contested legally and ethically, as all of this stuff is. There will always be people saying, I had an old agent of mine 2 days ago, this is funny, he knows this landscape, and he said to me, how can you do all this when you know that all of these models are trained on the images of artists and stock agencies and probably your own images? And to answer that adequately, you have to get into a conversation about how this stuff actually works. It's not a collage. It's not a pastiche. I'm not taking your foot and your ear and your eye and just putting them together. I'm not taking actual pieces of photo. None of us are. It's more akin to the way we form our own memories. If I want to, paint a picture of a finished face, well, I have a lot of data in my head around that. And it's stored as a type of visual and emotional logic. And I think with respect to the AI, the emotional component isn't there, but there's a visual logic. There's a kind of a DNA of what a glass looks like. What a glass looks like when that type of light is hitting it. What does a glass look like when you can see the reflection of a phone behind it? So that's going to be litigated. Everything gets litigated in a court of law, and I think usually billion-dollar companies have a lot to say. Companies who stand potentially to lose money will probably apply pressure in ways that might impact how this stuff ends up being legislated. But you know what? I don't really care. I'm not making this movie to make money. I'm expressing myself artistically. In a case where it was actually like taking copywritten material, sampling, we wouldn't have hip hop. We wouldn't have one of the greatest cultures of of our time that transcended music and everything if people didn't just decide to go to the record store and chop up actual pieces of a song and remix it and reconstitute it. I mean, that at least is, you can make a claim there that you've taken the thing, but
I think your work as part of Helsinki Festival has been, in a larger context, we've had several works and artists visiting on these themes, and Holly Herndon and Matt Drivers were here 2 years ago with an early work using Holly Plus, which is a tempo transfer voice model of Holly, but it was another person singing as her for the entire show. And clearly, in the audience, it was quite confusing. What is this? It was called IP for both identity play and intellectual property, I guess. But so it's a theme also on the sound side. Maybe one more question before we move to.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not sure I quite got it, but why did you decide to somehow filter the outcome of the synthetic images to make them more like true things?
Filter?
Like to remove what the images that the faces that didn't look.
Oh, remove. Okay, so okay, first off, unlike the way some people work, I don't just generate like a zillion photos and then curate the ones out that I like. I pretty much work in the feedback loop with the AI, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so I think in an attempt to give something that resembled a proper demographic or proper representation, which is hard in 40 images of who lives in the city. There were times where I thought I need to have someone who looks like, I need to have someone who looks Sami. I need to have somebody who looks like they're from the West. I need to have someone who looks like they're half Russian, half Swedish. But so this is just a creative choice. This is my creative choice, and so that's it. Simple as that. I didn't remove a face. I did modify. I'm looking at you right now, and I literally can imagine what I would do if you were made of clay.
That's right.
I could turn you into anything I want.
One more question.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about your perspective in how do you feel about classifying bodies and faces?
Oh, yeah.
Everything from that, especially when you talk about.
Let me tell you, the bias is so ridiculous, and it starts with classification. I've done a lot of work about this, so it's interesting. In AI, we talk about classification and discrimination and pruning And a lot of terms which are straight out of like like a fascist cookbook. And yes, it's crazy. Let me just answer this in a roundabout way. If I want to generate using a number of public models, one of the biggest ones, Stable Diffusion XL, and I say I want to show a couple with a Caucasian woman next to, in the case I think it is African American male, and they're sitting on a park bench, and I could say they're hugging, I could say they're just sitting next to each other. It is almost impossible to get a mixed couple sitting on the bench next to each other, which is bizarre. I mean, and I say, okay, so that's already across the board. That's a thing. There's one platform I mentioned it the other day. It's a platform called Runway. They've obviously done a lot of training from data from India. So it's like you don't ask for it, and then you end up with people that look South Indian, even though the shot you asked for was for a blonde Swede in Stockholm. And because sometimes you do need to call out. Sometimes you know exactly what you want and why you want it, and then and you're fighting against the bias. And weight comes into issue all the time. And some models assume that you want pretty-looking people, or whatever that means. Some assume that. Yeah, I mean it's wild actually, and this is to me is the biggest challenge in working with this technology, is fighting the bias. Also, if you want to show a drug addict in a given city in the United States, and then more often than not, it's going to show you a person of color as opposed to a white person. When I know that the place that I'm asking for, it's all a bunch of white, fentanyl addicts in this particular area, and yet makes them all black. So, and this is just, it's another great reminder of how dangerous bias is in AI systems. I did a lot of work around how the judicial system and the criminal justice system in America, how bias works against minorities in America through the bail system. So they have machine learning working on what we should set someone's bail, the money they can pay so they don't go to jail, and they put certain types of people at high risk, and those certain types of people are very much aligned with certain racist views. And so I don't think necessarily the coders who develop the stuff are Ku Klux Klan members, but somehow bias of all sorts works its way into AI, and it's super perverse. And I deal with a lot of that in the. In fact, I don't have it in there. I have a scene with some Ku Klux Klan members, and that's another thing. I learned this already a couple of years ago. When I wanted to portray Ku Klux Klan, half of them had dark skin, half of them were African Americans or black or whatever. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. Like, how did that happen? Like, who like, it's not the training data, because there's not a lot of, you could train on a zillion pictures of Ku Klux Klan, and they're pretty much all white, if you can even see their face. And yet, when you put in Stable Diffusion and a couple other models, Ku Klux Klan, you end up with a lot of, dark-skinned people with Klan hoods. So somebody must have done that. Like somebody must have like done that. I don't see how otherwise that could happen. And there's a lot of stuff like that. I don't know if I'd call them Easter eggs, but something like that.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I encourage everyone to please go to see the exhibition in Esplanade Park. Also, for Thursday night, when we announced Am I, the first screening, it was the quota of most of the theater at Biorex was the tickets on the Night of the Arts were booked in an hour, but we will be releasing some tickets, so please look out for those. And that'll be on Thursday, the 15th of August, world premiere at Biorex at 1900 hours. Thank you very much, and thank you for everyone on the stream, and we will now transition to more conversation about art here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.